Hey there, welcome back to the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabrielle Nicolay. I am a toddler whisperer, a speech therapist, and a parent coach. And I am here today with Julie Skolnick. Julie, hello.
Hi.
I'm delighted to have you. This has been a long time coming. And I'm really excited for what we're going to talk about today. Before we do that, would you introduce yourself to the good people and tell them who you are and what you do?
Sure, my pleasure. So I am Julie Skolnick. I'm the founder of a service called With Understanding Comes Calm. And when people need calm, they go, oh, when I say the name of my service. So I parent three twice exceptional, or as I call them, gifted and distractible kiddos. My youngest is just about to turn 17, so I have older kids. And I've been doing this for I've been doing that for 25 years, parenting 2E kids, but I've been working with Understanding Comes Calm for over 10 years. And it started, my tagline was supporting parents of gifted and distractible kids. And I created a whole process that follows what I call the cycle for success. And that is there's three stops on that cycle. How do we understand what it means to be gifted and distractible or 2E? And then how do we understand specifically the child in front of us? And the stop number two on that cycle for success are strategies. Now that we have understanding, let's get strategies that make sense and are appropriate for this profile. And then the third piece is advocacy. How do we craft this child's story? So I did that for like 2, 3 years. I produced an online conference before anybody was producing online conferences in like 2018. And then I had adults reaching out because I've been writing a blog a month since 2014. And adults would say, oh my God, the emotion dysregulation thing you're talking about, the intensity. How do you know? You're the only person. So then I created a service to support and guide and mentor 2E adults who are mostly looking for personal and professional fulfillment. And then I had teachers, districts, heads of school, principals reach out. So then I created a whole training for teachers. And my husband always says, I'll say, oh, I love my new client, or oh, I love training teachers, or oh, I love working with adults. He's like, what don't you love? And it's true. I'm very blessed to be doing what I'm doing. And in 2023, I finally tipped my head over and a book came out. And I was very blessed that Penguin Random House published Gifted and Distractible. And as of this week, we are well over 28,000 copies sold. It's won 3 awards. It's being used in school districts for teacher book studies, for parent courses that I teach, and 2E adults really love it until I can write my 2E adult book. So in a nutshell, I do lots of speaking. I do lots of groups and memberships and courses all about gifted and distractible humans for those stakeholders, parents, educators, 2E adults, and also clinicians will come to me to ask me to help them understand a profile.
Okay. And I love this. And all of that to dial us down into what does it mean to be 2E, and that's twice exceptional. What are we talking about? And before I hit record and you stopped me, I said, I think that a lot of people are confused because they get this far. They say, she's so smart, dot, dot, dot. And then the implication is, why can't they, dot, dot, dot. So the, the reason is because they're twice exceptional, but we need to explain what we mean. So what do we mean when
Yes.
we say somebody is 2E?
So it's the greatest, it's the $5 million question. But guess what? The good news is I have an answer. So, and I talk about it every day. Last night, I finished my last presentation last night at 9:30 p.m., let me tell you. So, and that was for Arizona. So they're in a different time zone. So it was more normal for them. But I was like, I go to bed at 9. What am I doing? Anyway, okay. What is 2E? And what the reason why I said, okay, Gabrielle, I'm not going to say anything right now because we're about to have the conversation. What I'm going to tell you is that gifted is actually what's misunderstood. And you hit it right on the head. You said, but she's so smart, right? Like I do a teacher team meeting for clients and I'll work with teachers who will be like, wait, what? You can be gifted and have slow processing speed? Yes, you can. Okay. So let's back up. Let's get our 30,000 foot view. And by the way, 2E, twice exceptional. What the heck does that mean? And that's why I say gifted and distractible. It's a little bit more relatable. And by the way, nobody's 2E. They're 2E, 3E, 5E, 10E. Nobody's 2E. Promise you. So, what does gifted and distractible mean? And I got the word distractible actually from the pediatric guide because I wanted to cast my net quite widely way back in 2014 when I had that tagline I told you about when I only supported parents. And distractible is what most people say, Julie, what do you mean by distractible? Well, that's the thing that is well defined, well researched. Most are in the DSM, or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, where psychologists, psychiatrists, pediatricians look for diagnoses. They're co-occurring conditions with gifted, from ADHD to autism to dyslexia, dysgraphia, written expression disorder, can include working memory, processing speed, social emotional challenges, anxiety. Okay, all of those things, that was not an exhaustive list. All of those things can co-occur next to giftedness. Okay, I always say this. Let's play Family Feud.
I'm going to stop you though. I'm going to
Yeah.
stop you. All of those things can occur next to giftedness. I just really want people to hear that. And then I know you're going to explain more, but like, even just that amount of news, that headline is like, wait, what? Okay.
Yeah, so they're co-occurring. So all of those things, several of those things at the same time, can be adjacent next to, at the same time, as giftedness. And remind me, Gabrielle, if I forget to talk about the Venn diagram, which is very important, remind me to say that. Okay, so we're going to play Family Feud. I'm going to survey the audience. What is the one word, people, if I surveyed the audience, that stands for gifted? What are people going to say? Gabrielle is going to represent you all, but I want you to think, what is the one word most people think gifted means? It's very obvious. This is not a trick.
Smart.
Bingo. That's what people think. They think smart. Sometimes people will be like bright, or they'll say the dirty word potential, which, by the way, I hate that word. Potential is so subjective. Who gets to decide you're not, and it's never used nicely. It's always like, you're not meeting your potential. You have so much potential. Why don't you XYZ? Instead of capacity. I use the word capacity. Anyway, that was a digression. So people don't get gifted. Smart is, and if you're not looking at the screen, and look at the screen right now because I'm showing you how much of gifted smart is. It's this much. Gifted is actually so much more. And because I teach pretty much every day of my life, I have the population that I have. I try very hard to use acronyms and imagery. And so I created, I'm just showing you in my book, the 3-layer cake of giftedness.
Love it.
The frosting, and mine's chocolate with chocolate, guys. You can have any flavor you want. And once I did this presentation and somebody said, wait, could I have different flavors of the cake? And I was like, yes, you beautiful 2E human, you can. How creative.
It's a metaphorical cake. Yes, you can have whatever flavor you want.
Do whatever you want. Okay. But the frosting, which is this thick, is above, around, between all the layers. That's the Family Feud assumption of smartness. That's what people think gifted is. And it is there, man. And it is around, between all the layers. Then you have these 3 layers or 3 characteristics: asynchronous development, perfectionism, and intensity, or what's known in gifted parlance as overexcitabilities. Remember, this is the 3-layer cake of giftedness. This is not the 3-layer cake of 2E-ness. So hold on. What do these words mean? Asynchronous development, if you think of it as and this is a different Venn diagram than the one I asked you to remind me of. If you think of a 3-ring Venn diagram, and you have your physical self, your social emotional self, and your intellectual self, that's how I draw a person, that 3-ring Venn diagram that you can imagine. All during the day, we're calling on those parts of ourselves, and they may support us in our endeavors and our ability to focus, but they also may be a weak part depending on the environment we're in. So right now you may be sitting, but hey, if you need to pace to listen, or you need to walk your dog, do that, right? Do whatever you need to do physically. Or maybe there are, 2E people, not all the time. I have some pretty incredible athletes as clients, but most of the time 2E people are actually, they struggle in athletics and in physical areas in that way. And then we have the intellectual area. Well, there's going to be a learning difference. The learning difference, maybe it's dyscalculia, so it's math. Maybe it's writing. Maybe it's reading, right? There's some intellectual learning difference, working memory, processing speed. And then we have our social emotional self. And for 2E people, for people who are identified as ADHD, we can say what Russell Barkley says, which is that you have to subtract 30% from their age, right? So even if you're 11, you're really 8 in some ways. And even if you're 20, you're 14 in some ways. Did I do that math right? Yes, I think I did. Having dyscalculia myself. So this asynchronous development, another way to think about it is the 5-10-15 rule, where you're 10 chronologically, you're 15 in some superpower, but you're 5 somewhere else. And that 5 stands for a learning difference and or social emotional challenges. So that's when what you said, Gabrielle, why can you do this, but you can't do that? That's asynchronous development. And asynchronous development is confusing. Show me a 2E kid who doesn't have anxiety or a 2E adult who doesn't have anxiety, because they're wondering too, what happened? I used to be smart. I used to be able to do everything, right? So this asynchronous development really fuels a lot of the anxiety and a lot of the confusion. Okay,
Yep.
so asynchronous development is that first layer. And I'm going to go on to perfectionism unless you had a question about that.
No, I think you keep going. This is awesome. And I'm just bringing everybody back and myself to this is the 3-layer cake of giftedness. And then we're going to add on, I think, probably.
Yes,
Yep.
we are. Okay, so then we have perfectionism.
Mm-hmm.
Can perfectionism be a driving force, like an incentive to do your best work? It could if it's healthy perfectionism.
Mm-hmm.
But what ends up happening is we tell our kids who are gifted how smart they are all the time. You're so smart. We set these expectations for them. They internalize expectations. And then, bam, 3rd grade, 8th grade, 11th grade, college. Those are my biggest influx of clients. You know, something hits the fan and it gets hard and we don't know what happened. My brain must have broke, right? So this is where we get the field of underachievement within giftedness.
Mm.
Gifted underachievement, where we have what Jim Delisle, may he rest in peace, used to call selective consumers, right? Like, I'm not going to do the stuff that might show I don't know what I'm doing. Because you know what? It's easier to not try and fail than it is to try and fail.
And just think about, just for the people listening, because I know you know this, but think about what there's a good word for it, but what a choice that is to have to prevent oneself from trying because the alternative is too scary, overwhelming, too fraught. Like that is a devil's bargain that we're making. And so I just to appreciate and to point out what a difficult spot kids and adults are in when they are making that kind of choice. Like that's really hard.
What happens is the person thinks they're hanging on to their gifted identity by a thread. So what happens is we have imposter syndrome. I don't think I really am as gifted as, everybody always said I was. Or we have paralysis. We're just not going to do anything. And by the way, because gifted humans, and we'll talk about this when we talk about overexcitabilities, can be so clever and existential and can imagine so much, it's really hard to actually put onto paper what's in your head. Yeah. Whether it's a drawing or a creation or writing or whatever it is. So already the expectations are inappropriate all the way around. And so just to let you know, because I am all about the strategies, the book has 200 pages of strategies. For a perfectionist, the best inoculation is to focus on effort over outcome, to praise process over product, as Carol Dweck says. Yep. So, okay. So that's perfectionism, our second layer in our layer cake. The third layer is really where the magic lies, in my opinion, and it's in what's called overexcitabilities, which is a term coined by psychologist Kazimierz Dabrowski. It was translated from the Polish. Many people in the field feel like it was misdefined. It should have been super stimulatabilities because overexcitability sounds negative. So, once you learn more about me, I am a positive reframer, strength-based approach person. And so much of the gifted world is like that. And so we're trying very hard to have positive information to come out there, which, by the way, just as another aside, all the drama over using the word gifted is so frustrating because people think it's elitist or people think it's racist or people think it's classist or people, and it really isn't, because actually we know that the exact same percentage of the population is gifted in any of those stratas. Okay. Anyway, whole other conversation on identification, but overexcitability, Dabrowski talked about as this intense response to stimuli. This is neurological, it's physiological. You cannot dial it up or dial it down at will, and it shows up in one or more of 5 areas. Intellectual overexcitability, emotional, imaginational, sensual or sensory, and psychomotor. So intellectual overexcitability is that rage to learn, wanting to know the why, but wanting to know the why behind the why. The kid who raises their hand and shouts out in the classroom and the teacher says, you know what, Gabriel, you've asked enough questions today. You need to give Julie a turn, which sounds really fair, but is actually shutting down and squelching the organic, authentic person and their curiosity. Why are we in school in the first place? Right? Okay. We say they can be fed through a fire hose, but are often given information drip by drip.
Yeah.
Then we have emotional overexcitable people. Can you tell that I fall squarely within that realm, right? Passion, empathy, deep desire for meaning, not a lot of patience for small talk, right? Don't talk to me about the weather. I want to have a really deep connection. Really cares about the world, connected to people, places, and things. I had a client once whose little girl was coming off the bus and they had put their old, worn, and tattered couch at the end of the driveway, and she burst into tears because the couch lived in their house their whole life, right? So, my kids used to have like drawers full. One of my kids had a drawer full of like lollipop wrappers, those dumb lollipop wrappers. I think he wanted to just keep those. Anyway, the the thing about emotional overexcitability is that you are such a loyal friend and you know what other people need before maybe they even know what they need, but rarely do you get that attention back. So it can feel like, what's wrong with me? Why don't people care about me as much as I can? So it's very important, parents and teachers, and clinicians, to make sure that an emotionally overexcitable person understands that their perspective is very different than most people on the planet. Doesn't make them better or worse, doesn't make the other people better or worse. They have to adjust expectations and they have to learn. Spoiler alert, the last chapter of my book is about self-love. They need to learn to understand themselves and to love who they are and to get it within the context of these potentially challenging emotional situations.
Yeah.
Okay, so intellectual, emotional, imaginational, super clever, whether it's on Minecraft or, if you go to, I live in Maryland. So if you go to Baltimore and you go to the Ripley's, believe it or not, there's like some people who make things to scale, like the Empire State Building, out of toothpicks, right? Like, whoa, that's imaginationally overexcitable. Sometimes these people can be misdiagnosed as ADD because what's so interesting in here keeps me from focusing and listening to what's happening out here.
Mm-hmm.
The imaginationally overexcitable person needs to doodle in order to focus, which
Mm-hmm.
turns on its head when teachers say, stop doodling, you need to focus. It's actually, wow, great job. You're doodling. So I know you're focusing, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you think about these 5 areas of the brain, this is like so not scientific. It's like the Juliism. If you think of these 5 areas of the brain as like bigger parts of the brain, and you got to have them online and taken care of in order for a child to do the thing that the grown-up wants them to do. So intellectually overexcitable has to be stimulated, has to be interesting, not more work, but deeper work.
Mm-hmm.
Emotionally overexcitable person has to feel safe and understand their emotions and have a place to be able to share emotions. Imaginational overexcitable person needs assignments that are creative, needs to have choice, needs to be able to doodle in order to learn. So psychomotor overexcitable people, they need to move in order to learn. So when I see preferential seating on an IEP 504 education plan, I'm always like, well, what does that actually mean? It's better to say preferential seating in the back or the side of the room so the person can pace,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
During COVID, I had a client who was like, oh my God, Julie, I don't know what to do. My 10-year-old is literally running laps in the perimeter of the dining room where the laptop is, where school is happening. I was like, I guess you've got to praise her for being so self-aware. She's not running all over the house. She's clearly trying to stay in the dining room where the school is happening. And now you just say to the teacher, hey, my kid figured out that in order to focus for this weird online school thing, she's going to be running the perimeter. So if that's distracting to you or the class, do you want the camera off? And if you want the camera off, how do you want to check in with her? What works for you? Notice I didn't give a choice. Like, she's going to run. Because wow, what a great hack. Okay, last but not least, the fifth overexcitability is sensual or sensory, right? It looks like sensory processing differences. We have sensory seekers, we have sensory avoiders. Again, we need to have that taken care of. If there's too much noise, we need sound canceling headphones. If I need input, then I need to have a TheraBand on my chair so I can push my feet down or have a lap pad or something like that. Okay, so just to review, the gifted layer cake, the frosting or the icing is that smart assumption. It's definitely there. And it can be in one or more areas you can be gifted musically, charismatically, as well as all the other academic ways. And then we have asynchronous development, this uneven development. We have perfectionism, the other side of which is anxiety. And then we have overexcitabilities. Last thing I'll say, because I'm saying a lot of words, is that Venn diagram I talked about. I want you to imagine you've got your gifted side and you've got your, let's call it special education side. If you look at the gifted side only, oh man, they're so lazy. Look at what they could be doing, but they must not want to. They must be manipulative. They must be disrespectful. If you look at only the special ed side, you're like, oh, we can't give them that cool enrichment thing or accelerate them because of their behavior, which by the way is backwards. Give them the cool enrichment or acceleration and the behavior will go away. Or, we lower expectations. So we have glass half full, glass half empty. Neither expectations are appropriate. We have to look at that nice little chunk in the middle. That's 2E. You have to look at the whole child and address the whole child. And frankly, using the strengths and passions and interests of the child is the best way to shore up struggles. Okay, I said a lot of words.
I love all the words. I feel like what you said just now in particular, but everything that you have just said is really a template for understanding all people.
Yes,
And
what best practices for 2E humans are best practices for all humans.
hello, thank you.
Absolutely.
So, just understanding the individual who's in front of you with their strengths, with their less strengths, with their interests and their passions and the way they process information. That is what gets one to an understanding of a human. And now we know what to do. And I will say, I'll call out to the teachers who have 30 humans in their classrooms who are all wired differently, even if they're considered neurotypical. Which again, this is a particular flavor of neurodivergence that we're talking about, of neurodiversity even too. But so like respect for like, it's hard.
100%, 100%. Right? And when I talk about advocacy, that third stop on my cycle for success, it's collaborative advocacy. I have everybody's back because it's really frustrating when all you get is negative feedback from parents. And it's really anxiety provoking when all people do is tell you negative things about your kid. And so it makes for a really easy way to lock horns. But instead, we really have to hold hands. I've never said that before, and I really like it. Instead of locking horns, we need to lock hands or hold hands and be together on this.
Yeah, I like that. And we keep the child at the center.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay. So we have this giftedness side going on. And then we have whatever we have on what sort of makes it maybe clear for people, like this special education. We have some learning needs. We have some diagnoses that we're dealing with. I don't know what the question is. How do those smush? How do we look at that Venn diagram and then proceed?
Yeah. So I'm such an assumption debunker.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of assumptions out there. There are a lot of patterns. There are a lot of parenting styles. There's a lot of expectations on teachers. So last night when I was training, I think this was I did actually back-to-back talks last night, one in Pennsylvania, one in Arizona, and one from 6:30 to 8 and one from 8:30 to 9:30. But it fires me up. So I even surprised myself. But I had a teacher say, I've got 35 students in my class. I hear what you're saying about personal relationship and personal connection, but how do I do that? So I said, okay, I get it. You have a lot of expectations. You have very little help, if any. One of my favorite things to say, and I say this both to parents and to educators, find the hardest kid to love and love them the hardest. I promise you, promise you, the effort you make on the front end to try to connect with this kid who we all know from past things has done stuff or not done stuff or caused trouble. If you take the time to find out, sit down with that kid and say, what makes you tick? What ticks you off? What would make learning better? What do you love doing? What's your passion place? Okay, besides on screens, what's your other passion that you like to do? Do you have siblings? Do you have a pet? Have you traveled? Do you play music? What's your favorite band? Learn who this kid is. Okay, so let me tell you a cool story. Right now, I'm supporting a teacher in Israel. and he has a whole group of 2E kids.
Hmm.
And it's his first time teaching, and he's amazing. And he actually took my book and he took something out of my book and he used it in his classroom, and it was magic. The kid who was the most difficult was this kid who's like this almost Olympic level tennis player.
Hmm.
So this happens to be an English class teaching Israeli kids to speak English. And he made a whole lesson around tennis vocabulary that the child helped to teach. What happened? A, kids totally engaged. B, wow, gave me all this responsibility. I'm leading the class. So C, I've got loyalty. When you get a 2E kid to be loyal, it's magic. They can do things that you didn't think they could do. Like they actually overcome learning disabilities. I've seen it happen in my own kids, and I've seen it happen in my clients' kids. And then the kid feels like responsible, and they're going to be magic for you.
There was so, oh my God. Okay. First of all, full body chills when you said that, because that's the hook, right? That's the nervous system hook. And that's co-regulation, which is like the holy grail of all human relationship, is like, can our nervous systems play nicely together? Can we be in sync? That's all of what that means. And that has physiological, neurological reality. Okay. And this idea, oh God, and it's going away. It's, and those ideas just kind of, woof. Um, that teachers think they don't have time for that.
Yes. Yes.
We think, and parents too, I don't have time to just connect with my child on a topic of their own interest. By the way, I've been coaching a lot of parents lately who are like, but I'm terrible at video games. I'm like, that's perfect. Your child is the expert. Let them teach you the video games,
Yeah.
and spend 10 minutes in their shoes feeling like an asshat because you don't know how to play.
So that personal connection is the flagship. So again, I like to use acronyms and images. And so my acronym for strategies is a 6-letter word, because I teach 6 categories of strategies. The word is praise, and it stands for personal connection, reframe. How do we look at behavior? I have example after example after example of reframing. How do we reframe behavior from, they're just not trying hard enough, to, wow, they are trying so hard with all the stuff going on and all the messaging they're getting? So personal connection, reframe, anticipate. You know so much. You know when you go to a restaurant, your kid melts down because it's too loud. Plan for it. Don't hope it changes. Bring earplugs. Right? Okay. Personal connection, reframe, anticipate. Incentives and choices. I actually prefer choices to incentives, but that didn't spell a word. And sense of humor and exercise. And those are the 6 categories of strategies that I teach. And everything starts from personal connection. That is the most important thing. So I ask some of my clients, I'll say, when's the last time you had fun with your kid? And a lot of clients, and I get it, parents, you got a checklist and you're busy and you might have other kids and you got a spouse. And by the way, if you got 2E kids, even when my parents adopted 2E kids, somebody's 2E, one of the parents. It's genetic for sure. And so you're dealing with a spouse or your own executive functioning challenges, right? And you're trying to get all the things done. Your head's going to explode. Could I just eat dinner and go to bed? Right? So how do I have time to actually make a personal connection? So I actually teach strategies for that, because you need that, because it's hard to remember. Also, by the way, sometimes our kids are annoying and it's hard to want to spend time. And I get it.
I mean, you live with anybody long enough, they're going to be annoying. Like this
It
is,
could be. It could
and
be.
and somehow we forget when it's our kids, and when our kids have needs, and like when they're all extra. A lot of the time we're like, oh, they're so annoying. Yeah, people are annoying when you live with them. Like that's true.
And they're annoying because they aren't getting needs met and they don't know how to say it. And they're
Yeah,
maladaptively behaving in
yeah.
response to an entire day. I do a whole day in the life of the 2E kid in some of my presentations. And from the minute they wake up and have that monkey mind and start remembering all the things they screwed up yesterday or things they're going to screw up today, to when they come home from school, I mean, I talk about the bucket of resilience, and they are often working from an empty bucket of resilience.
Yeah.
If we can fill the bucket of resilience, and that's what we're really talking about here, Gabrielle, when we can fill the bucket of resilience, harder things aren't as hard. But
Yep.
when we have an empty bucket of resilience, harder things are even harder.
Yep. Yep. And it's so interesting because back to this adult book that you're going to write at some point. Um,
Hopefully soon.
hopefully soon. Tell me, because I'm sure I'm going to ask you a leading question, which is if adults are pouring from an empty resilience bucket into their kids, now what? Now, like, ugh.
So it's a great question. And actually, yesterday I was working with a dad who one of his goals, as we were setting goals, was so I give everybody, I'll give you guys a gift. Okay. So open your hands, Gabrielle, open your hands. I am giving you my gift. Here it is. It is an invisible pause button. Press the pause button. And he was like, okay, I really need to remember the pause button you gave me because I need to self-regulate when my kid triggers me so that I don't trigger him further.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I have another client I worked with yesterday, a new client. The dad has significant, he's a significant challenges physically. And his kid will sometimes be in his space and his face, and he can't, and he's a sensory avoider, and he hates it when his kid does this.
Mm-hmm.
So please stop doing that. Don't do that. Stop doing that. Don't do that. Why are you doing that? You know, I don't like it when you do that. And I said to him, could you just ask one question? Could you just say to your child, what do you need right now?
Mm-hmm.
Because the kid needs something.
Yeah.
Right? Probably dealing with the fact that dad had this thing happen that made him so physically unabled and figuring things out,
Yeah.
you know? And so we all have to have that capacity to deal with one another. And I actually use the strategy of role modeling a lot to help us actually repair ourselves as grown-ups. Somebody has to be the grown-up. So if we can realize when I'm emotionally dysregulated, if I go, man, I'm feeling my shoulders, they're up by my ears. Oh, my belly's kind of tight. I can feel my forehead kind of crinkly. I must be really emotionally drained right now. You know what? This is so important, and I'm afraid I'm going to say something that I might regret later. So I'm going to take 5 and come back. Can you imagine if your kid did that? Your kid comes and says, whoa, you know what? Wow, the signs are there. I'm becoming emotionally dysregulated, mom. And I don't want to say anything or do anything I'll regret. So do you mind if I go to my room and take 5 and come back? Could you imagine?
And
So
listen, no disrespect to people who are like, oh my God, that's never going to happen. It might take time.
oh,
And
100%. Nothing is one conversation. Thank you for bringing that up.
and modeling really works if you can get into the habit of it. And it works way better than telling particularly teens and tweens what to do.
Yeah,
Right?
no. And if you need a break, take a break. But a lot of my work with parents has to do with giving agency, right? Like I
Yeah.
have developed the frontal lobe for the family. How many people? How many people out there are the frontal lobe for the family?
Yep.
It's easier, it's more efficient, it's less painful. It makes it easier for my kid. But you know what else it does? It tells your kid you don't think they can do this thing.
Yeah.
It also doesn't teach any skills. And
Yeah.
what we want to do is create agency and independence. I have a ladder. The ladder starts with self-awareness. Who am I? Oh, I'm emotionally overexcitable. Let me tell you, my beautiful 17-year-old boy at 3 asked me, I can see it in my mind's eye, on our way to preschool, in the car seat in the back. He said, seriously, deadpan, was like, Mama, do we need to live or do we want to live? I was like, oh my God. Could I maybe not have a gifted kid? Anyway, so from that minute on, and from 3 years old, I have talked to that child about his emotional overexcitability and his ability to have existential considerations and how amazing that is, but how you're probably going to have disappointment in other people because they're not to that level. Not that there's anything wrong with them,
Yeah.
not that you're better than them, but this is a skill, boy, do you have
Mm-hmm.
innately, inherently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I one time had a client ask me would I meet with her 16-year-old daughter. And I don't meet with kids. My theory is to circle the wagons of the grown-ups. The kids don't have the power. I need the grown-ups to understand so they can model and help their kids become self-aware.
Mm-hmm.
So I said no. She said she watched a video on your website. I have a video talking to kids about what it means to be 2E. And she really wants to meet with you. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, the 16-year-old really wants to meet with this random professional old lady. So I was like, okay, I will do it, but you have to be there. So this is the one time I've done this. And I knew exactly, I would do a lot through intuition. I knew exactly what was going on. This was going to be an emotionally overexcitable child who was very disappointed in friends because she's 16. This is the age. So I meet her, we talk a little bit, and I literally say to her, Gabrielle, do you ever text a friend and they don't text you back? And full on crying, like I nailed it. And she was like, I don't get it. I would never do that. Why would I ignore somebody? So I was like, you know what? You're right. It's really important to show loyalty and to show that you respect and you care about a person. Did you ever think, and I taught her the phrase, what if, what else? What if she left her phone at home?
Mm.
What else could be going on for her? Could she be someplace where she's not allowed to have her phone?
Mm.
Like, do we have to go big or go home, or can there be a middle ground?
Yeah.
And we sort of worked through why her brain goes immediately to catastrophize
Mm-hmm.
and self-talk she can use to help herself stay, on the planet Earth.
Yep. Oh,
Yeah.
God, so much goodness. Okay. Um, I'm so aware of the time and that I would love to continue this conversation, which we will probably do in a part 2 at some other point. If people want to learn more about you, Julie Skolnick, what do they do?
Thank you for asking. So the easiest thing is to go to withunderstandingcomescalm.com, and we have a bazillion free things. I have a parent toolbox, a 2E adult toolbox, a teacher toolbox. If you go to the pages are all there, parent page, 2E adult. I have a really amazing gifted and distractible course, 8-week course. It's four sessions live for an hour and a half each, and 4 weeks of getting chunked webinars that walk you through the book. It's awesome. You get a community. So we launch that like 3 times a year.
Mhm.
So you can look for that. And the way you find out about all these offerings I'm telling you is to sign up for our free newsletter that comes out 3 times a month. It has my blog, a vlog, and sort of a roundup. Where can you find Julie speaking, or what do you need to know is happening in the community that you can go and partake in? Um, I have for 2E adults, the Haystack. It's called the Haystack membership for 2E adults because finding peers who you relate to is like looking for a needle in the haystack. So we provide the haystack and the needles come. And it is magnificent, well beyond my dreams ever. It's very cool. It's $57 a month, and you get we have a theme. So this month our theme is actually societal norms around intelligence.
Mm.
Next month, we're doing a very cool modality for addressing trauma. Anyway, the first week you get a webinar of me and another expert talking. The second week we meet live. You go into breakout rooms of 5 or fewer, so adults get to hang out, and that's the magic. And then the third week you get articles on the topic, and the fourth week we meet again live. And if there's a fifth week, we usually have some very funky thing that we do together as a group. So that's the Haystack. My teachers, I have a book study that goes along with Gifted and Distractible, and I have a reflection journal that I made for teachers. And then I keynote and speak everywhere. And by the way, if you're on Substack or any social media channel, I'm there, and I have a team who deals with it, thank God. But there's lots of cool stuff that gets posted. Today we sent out an email that asked people to consider the difference between masking and compensating. What does that
Mm.
mean for you in your life? And tomorrow they're going to get my vlog, which is me giving an answer, but also sharing all the answers we've been getting all day today from people out there to really think through this really incredible, interesting, I think, topic.
Nice.
So there's lots of ways to connect and so many things. And I offer a free 20-minute phone consultation on Fridays. That link is also on the website.
Perfect. Oh my gosh. And we will link to the website in the show notes. That'll be there. Julie
Thank you.
Skolnick, this is a treat. Thank you.
Thank you. For me too. Really appreciate everybody's time.